Picture this. A 7-year-old boy screams as masked elders examine his naked body on a mountain cliff. One flaw, one sign of weakness, and he plunges to his death. But if he survives this inspection, he'll become something that will haunt enemy nightmares for centuries, a Spartan warrior. Meanwhile, halfway across the world and 15 centuries later, another child watches his father slice open his own belly with a curved blade. This isn't madness. This is the birth of the samurai. 2 cultures, 2 codes, 2 definitions of what it means to be the perfect killer. But which one would you rather face in battle? Ancient Greece, 480 BCE. The Persian Empire, the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, marches toward a narrow mountain pass. 2 million soldiers, the finest warriors from across the known world, led by Xerxes, who believes himself a god. Standing in their way, 300 men from a city-state most people had never heard of. But these weren't just any men. They were the end product of the most ruthless military experiment in human history. Sparta didn't just train soldiers, it manufactured weapons in human form. The process began before birth. Weak babies were left to die on Mount Taygetus. The strong ones faced something arguably worse, the agoge, a 20-year program designed to strip away everything human except the capacity for violence. At age 7, Spartan boys were ripped from their mother's arms. They slept on beds of reeds they cut themselves, without blankets, in freezing mountain barracks. Food was deliberately scarce. They were expected to steal to survive. Getting caught wasn't punished for theft, but for incompetence. Pain became their constant companion. Beatings, humiliation, wounds left to fester. These weren't accidents of training, but core curriculum. The famous story of the Spartan boy who let a stolen fox eat his intestines rather than confess wasn't legend. It was the minimum standard. But the agoge didn't just forge unbreakable bodies. It created minds that understood only one truth: return with your shield or on it. When a Spartan mother handed her son his shield, she wasn't wishing him luck. She was reminding him there were only 2 honorable ways to come home: victorious or dead. The psychology was perfect. By the time a Spartan reached 20, he had been so thoroughly dehumanized that death in battle wasn't feared. It was welcomed as the ultimate expression of his purpose. Now, let's travel to the other side of the world. Japan, 1185 CE. The Genpei War has ended with the Minamoto clan's victory at Dan no Ura. The age of the samurai officially begins, but these warriors didn't emerge from nothing. They were the culmination of centuries of cultural evolution that had transformed simple fighters into something approaching the divine. Where Spartans were forged through brutal conditioning, samurai were cultivated like precious art. The process began in childhood, but not with physical torture. It started with the mind. Before a young samurai could even touch a sword, he mastered calligraphy, poetry, music, and the tea ceremony. This wasn't cultural refinement for its own sake. It was strategic conditioning. A warrior who couldn't find beauty in a cherry blossom couldn't find the serenity needed to face death without flinching. The samurai code, Bushido, fused Zen Buddhism, Confucianism, and Shintoism into a philosophy that made the warrior into something mystical. Death wasn't an ending, but a transformation. The samurai who died with honor achieved a kind of immortality. The katana wasn't just a weapon. It was the samurai's soul made steel. Master swordsmiths folded metal thousands of times, creating blades that could cut silk floating in the air and cleave armor like paper. But more importantly, each sword was unique, forged specifically for its bearer, becoming an extension of body and spirit. Seppuku represented the ultimate expression of this philosophy. It wasn't suicide. It was the final demonstration that honor mattered more than life. A samurai who opened his own belly with his sword didn't die defeated. He died undefeated because he had chosen the moment and manner of his death. So we have 2 radically different approaches to creating the perfect warrior. The Spartans used systematic brutality to forge human weapons. The samurai used philosophical refinement to create warrior poets. But the question remains, in a fight to the death, which would prevail? The answer might surprise you. Because the real battle wasn't just about who could kill more effectively, it was about who could create a sustainable warrior culture that could survive the test of time. In the next chapter, we'll witness these warriors in their most legendary battles and discover that the greatest test of a warrior isn't how he fights, but how he dies. What do you think? Would you rather face the raw brutality of a Spartan or the refined lethality of a samurai? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button if you're enjoying this deep dive, and subscribe because the next chapter is going to blow your mind with some of the most epic battles in human history. It's dawn at Thermopylae. A wall of bronze shields stretches across the narrow pass as 300 Spartans prepare to face the largest army in human history. But this isn't just about numbers. This is about what happens when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force. Meanwhile, in the mist-covered plains of Sekigahara, a lone samurai kneels in meditation as two armies prepare for the battle that will determine Japan's fate for the next 300 years. These weren't just battles, they were laboratories where warrior philosophies were tested to their absolute limits. August 20th, 480 BCE. The Hot Gates, Thermopylae, where the fate of Western civilization balanced on the edge of 300 bronze spear points. Leonidas hadn't chosen this location by accident. The narrow pass negated Xerxes' massive numerical advantage. It was brilliant tactical thinking that revealed the true genius of Spartan warfare. They didn't just fight better than everyone else, they fought smarter. The phalanx formation was more than military tactics. It was Spartan philosophy made manifest. Each warrior carried a bronze shield weighing 15 pounds, but not to protect himself. The shield protected the man to his left. Individualism was death. Unity was survival. When the Persian arrows darkened the sky, legend says the Spartan Dianekes quipped, "Good, then we'll fight in the shade." But this wasn't bravado. It was calculated psychological warfare. The Persians had never encountered warriors who treated overwhelming odds as an advantage. The moment of truth came when Xerxes' elite immortals, soldiers who had conquered half the known world, crashed into the Spartan line. These weren't ordinary fighters. They were professional killers who had never met their match. Until now. The Spartans didn't just fight. They performed a dance of death they had practiced since childhood. Every movement was precise. Every strike calculated. There was no wild fury, just lethal efficiency perfected over decades. The immortals, for all their skill, were fighting individuals. The Spartans were fighting as a single organism. The battle raged for 3 days. When it ended, Leonidas lay dead, his body riddled with arrows. But he had achieved something more valuable than victory. He had created immortality. The 300 had lost the battle but won the war of legend. Now let's see how samurai faced their defining moment. October 15th, 1600. The plains of Sekigahara, where the future of Japan would be decided not by foreign invasion, but by the clash of two samurai philosophies. This wasn't just a battle, it was a civil war between different interpretations of Bushido. Ishida Mitsunari represented traditional samurai values, loyalty, honor, and fighting to the death, regardless of odds. Tokugawa Ieyasu embodied pragmatic Bushido, honor through victory, service to the greater good, adaptation to changing times. The battle began before dawn, when mist still covered the field. Unlike the Spartans, who fought in tight formations, samurai warfare was intensely personal. Each warrior sought a worthy opponent, someone whose head would be an honorable trophy. The katana, in a master samurai's hands, was more than a weapon. It was an extension of his soul. The art of yaijutsu allowed a samurai to draw and cut in a single motion, killing an opponent before they realized the attack had begun. But true mastery wasn't about speed, it was about precision. A perfect cut killed without unnecessary suffering. The turning point came when Kobayakawa Hideaki, positioned on Mount Matsuo, chose to remain neutral instead of supporting Mitsunari. This wasn't cowardice. It was strategic Bushido. He had calculated that true honor lay in serving the stability of Japan, not in dying for a lost cause. When the sun set on Sekigahara, over 30,000 men lay dead, but Japan had found its peace. Bushido hadn't died. It had evolved. The samurai had proven that adaptation was as honorable as glorious death. 2 battles, 2 philosophies, 2 completely different definitions of victory. The Spartans at Thermopylae transformed military defeat into spiritual triumph. They proved that some things, honor, duty, sacrifice, were more valuable than life itself. Their defeat became more powerful than any victory. The samurai at Sekigahara showed that true honor sometimes meant choosing pragmatism over tradition. They demonstrated that the greatest warrior wasn't necessarily the one who died most gloriously, but the one who served the greater good most effectively. But here's the crucial difference. The Spartans fought to preserve their way of life. The samurai fought to create a new one. Both were willing to die for their beliefs, but only one was willing to live for them. In the next chapter, we'll examine the weapons and techniques that made these warriors legendary and discover why the deadliest tool wasn't always the sharpest blade. The rhythmic clang of bronze on bronze echoes through the Spartan gymnasium as 2 warriors drill with their 8-foot spears. Each strike is calculated, each parry precise. The dory isn't just a weapon, it's an extension of Spartan philosophy made manifest. But thousands of miles away, in a silent dojo, a samurai sits in meditation before his katana. The curved steel reflects his face, but what he sees isn't his image. It's his destiny. What makes a weapon legendary? Raw efficiency or artistic perfection? The answer reveals everything about the souls of these warrior cultures. Spartan weapons were the product of brutal evolutionary pressure. Every piece of equipment had been tested in the crucible of actual combat and refined over centuries. There was no room for decoration, no tolerance for inefficiency. Form followed function with mathematical precision. The dory, the Spartan spear, measured exactly 8 feet in length. This wasn't arbitrary. It was the perfect balance between reach and maneuverability. Long enough to strike the enemy before they could use their weapons, short enough to remain effective in close combat. The iron spearhead could punch through virtually any armor of the era. But the true genius lay in the saurata, the bronze spike at the rear end. If the spear point broke, the Spartan could reverse his weapon and continue fighting. This dual-purpose design reflected the Spartan mentality. There was no acceptable reason to stop killing the enemy. The aspis, the round shield, weighed 15 pounds and measured 3 feet across. It wasn't just personal protection. It was the foundation of the phalanx. The Spartan who lost his shield didn't just endanger himself, he betrayed his entire unit. Return with your shield or on it wasn't poetry. It was a literal description of the only acceptable outcomes. The xiphus, the short sword, was the weapon of last resort. When spears broke and formations collapsed, combat became intimate and deadly. The Spartan sword was shorter than those of other cultures, designed for thrusting rather than slashing. In the chaos of close combat, a precise thrust to the heart was more effective than trying to hack off limbs. But perhaps the most important Spartan weapon was psychological. The red cloak, the bronze-faced helmet, the perfectly synchronized movements. Everything was designed to create fear. Spartans understood that a terrified enemy was already half defeated. Meanwhile, in the workshops of Japan, a completely different philosophy was taking shape. The katana wasn't just a weapon. It was the samurai's soul made steel. The forging process took months, with master swordsmiths folding the metal thousands of times, creating blades of impossible sharpness and flexibility. The steel itself, tama hagane, was created in clay furnaces that burned for days. Master smiths could judge the quality by the color of sparks, the sound of hammer on metal, subtleties that only decades of experience could reveal. The finished blade combined hard steel for the cutting edge with softer steel for the flexible spine, creating a weapon that could cut and bend without breaking. Kenjutsu, the art of the sword, wasn't just combat technique, it was applied philosophy. Each kata, each sequence of movements, taught not just how to kill, but when it was honorable to do so. The iai jutsu, the art of drawing and cutting in one motion, required decades to master. A true master could eliminate an opponent before they realized the attack had begun, but the katana was just one part of the samurai arsenal. The wakizashi, the short sword, was the katana's constant companion, used for indoor fighting and, when the time came, for seppuku. The tanto, the dagger, was the weapon of absolute last resort, so sharp it could pierce the joints of any armor. The yumi, the Japanese bow, was considered the most noble weapon. A mounted samurai with his bow could loose arrows with deadly accuracy, even at full gallop. The kyudo ceremony wasn't just archery training, it was active meditation that united body, mind, and spirit in perfect concentration. Two completely different approaches to the same problem, how to kill efficiently. Spartan weapons were tools of war, nothing more, nothing less. Every design choice prioritized effectiveness over aesthetics. The Spartan who hesitated to admire his sword's beauty was a dead Spartan. Samurai weapons were works of art that happened to be deadly. Every curve, every fold in the steel, every decoration had meaning. The samurai who couldn't appreciate his weapon's beauty wasn't worthy to wield it. But here's the fascinating paradox. Both approaches created weapons of legendary effectiveness. The Spartan dori was so efficient it remained essentially unchanged for centuries. The samurai katana was so perfect it became the standard by which all swords are measured. The difference lay not in the weapons themselves, but in what they represented. Spartan weapons were extensions of the collective, tools for the phalanx, instruments of group warfare. Samurai weapons were extensions of the individual, expressions of personal honor, manifestations of individual excellence. This difference reveals something profound about each culture's understanding of warfare itself. Spartans saw war as a problem to be solved through superior organization and training. Samurai saw war as an art to be perfected through personal mastery and spiritual development. In our final chapter, we'll discover what happened when these perfect warriors faced their ultimate enemy, a world that no longer needed them. The year is 371 BCE. The last true Spartan warrior falls face first into the mud at Leuctra, his bronze shield rolling away as everything he believed in crumbles around him. But across the world, in an island nation that has never known foreign conquest, a samurai watches black ships appear on the horizon. It's 1853, and the world is about to change forever. What happens when the perfect warrior meets the one enemy they cannot defeat? Obsolescence. The decline of Sparta didn't come from military defeat. It came from something far more insidious: success without purpose. For centuries, Spartans had built the most militarized society in history, but that very perfection contained the seeds of its own destruction. The system that created super soldiers had sacrificed everything else. Sparta produced no philosophers, no artists, no merchants, no innovators. While Athens explored democracy and philosophy, while other cities developed trade and technology, Sparta had become a living museum of warfare. The Battle of Leuctra in 371 BCE wasn't just a military loss, it was the end of a myth. Epaminondas of Thebes had discovered that the Spartan phalanx, invincible for centuries, had a fatal flaw: rigidity. New oblique tactics, coordinated cavalry, adaptive formations had made Spartan perfection obsolete. But the real tragedy wasn't the defeat. It was what came after. The surviving Spartans found themselves in a world that no longer needed them. Their skills, honed for one specific type of warfare, had no place in the new Hellenistic reality. Some became mercenaries, others became tourist attractions for wealthy Romans. The culture that had produced history's most disciplined warriors faded away in just a few generations. The Spartan experiment had a fundamental flaw. It was too perfect for its own good. By optimizing for one specific type of warfare, they had made themselves incapable of adapting to anything else. When the world changed, they couldn't change with it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, a more dramatic transformation was about to unfold. July 8th, 1853. Commodore Matthew Perry's black ships anchored in Edo Bay, bringing with them more than just trade negotiations. They brought the modern world, and with it, the obsolescence of everything the samurai represented. The samurai faced an impossible choice: adapt or die. Unlike the Spartans, who had no experience with change, the samurai had always understood that true strength came from flexibility. The bamboo bends but doesn't break. The Meiji Restoration of 1868 forced the choice. Many samurai chose resistance. Saigo Takamori, the last great samurai, led the Satsuma Rebellion in 1877, a civil war that pitted swords against rifles, traditional honor against modern pragmatism. The Battle of Shiroyama was the symbolic end of the samurai era. Saigo and his last 300 followers faced a modern imperial army equipped with contemporary weapons. The outcome was inevitable, but the manner of their death transformed defeat into spiritual victory. But here's where the samurai story diverges dramatically from the Spartan one. They found a way to transcend their own obsolescence. Bushido didn't die with the katana, it evolved. The samurai values transformed into Japanese corporate culture, into the discipline that built the economic miracle of the 20th century, into the mentality that allowed Japan to reinvent itself again and again. The samurai had learned the ultimate lesson. True immortality comes not from never changing, but from never compromising your core principles while adapting to any circumstances. So after this deep dive, who was the deadlier warrior, the Spartan or the samurai? The question itself reveals our fascination with perfect violence, with warriors who transcend ordinary human limitations. But the real answer is more complex and more fascinating than pure combat effectiveness. In terms of raw military efficiency, the Spartan probably takes the crown. They were optimized killing machines, perfected through centuries of brutal selection and training. In a straight fight, sword against spear, individual samurai against individual Spartan, the outcome would likely depend more on circumstances than inherent superiority. But if we expand the question to ask who created the more effective warrior culture, the answer changes dramatically. The Spartans created warriors who were perfect for their time, but couldn't adapt to change. They were an evolutionary dead end, magnificent, but ultimately sterile. The samurai created warriors who embodied principles that could survive any transformation. They were an evolutionary success, not just deadly, but immortal. The real difference wasn't in their capacity to kill, but in their capacity to transcend death. The Spartans built a culture that couldn't survive its own success. The samurai forged values that survived the disappearance of their entire class. The legacy of both cultures lives on in unexpected ways. Every modern special forces unit trains with Spartan-inspired discipline. Every martial arts dojo teaches samurai-influenced philosophy. Military academies worldwide study Spartan tactics. Business schools analyze samurai leadership principles. But perhaps the most important lesson isn't about warfare at all. It's about the human capacity for excellence. Both cultures proved that ordinary people can be transformed into something extraordinary through discipline, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to ideals. The Spartan legacy asks, how much are you willing to sacrifice for perfection? The samurai legacy asks, how can you maintain your principles while adapting to change? Both questions remain as relevant today as they were centuries ago. In our modern world of constant change and endless challenges, we need both the Spartans' unbreakable discipline and the samurai's flexible wisdom. The deadliest warrior isn't the one who kills most efficiently. It's the one whose ideals survive long after their sword has turned to rust. So what's your verdict? After this complete analysis, which warrior culture speaks to you more, the uncompromising excellence of the Spartans or the adaptable honor of the samurai? Drop your final thoughts in the comments, smash that like button if this journey through warrior history has been as fascinating for you as it was for me, and subscribe because we've got more epic cultural showdowns coming your way. Until next time, remember, the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with ideas.